So I'm back, slightly different venue. As I said, I'm traveling right now, so I'm recording these in a condo, kind of a big hotel. And so bear with me as we go through these videos. Today we're in chapter 2 verses, nope, we're in chapter 2 verses 5 through 18. I'm going to give you kind of an overview of that today and just scan through this just so you get the context. I'm going to do this periodically, look at a big section, and then we'll get into the details next time. But right now, I want to give you the big picture of what we're looking at in 518. And the writer has just made the point that Jesus is not only greater than the prophets, but also greater than the angels. Now he's going to make the point that for a particular period of time, Jesus was made a little lower than the angels. So we'll see this in this overview section. That's the point that he's making, and he makes it in two ways. First, he talks about the fact that he was made lower than the angels. That's in chapter 2, verses 5 through 9. And then he's going to talk about the reason that he was made lower than the angels in verses 10 through 18. And he's going to give us four reasons. We'll look at all these more closely, but I wanted you to get the big picture. What we call this theologically, I think, if we can use that phrase, don't let that scare you off, is the idea that Jesus humbled himself, or the humiliation of Jesus. And it's really a profound thought when you dwell on it for a moment. Here we have the creator of everything. He's been presented to us in the book of Hebrews as the creator and sustainer of all things, of all creation. But he's humbled himself, he submitted himself, he yielded himself to his creation. Now, he never became less than God, but he added on to himself humanity. Jesus, knowing our humanity, came to know hunger, thirst, pain, grief. Think about Lazarus' death and how Jesus wept at his tomb. It's an amazing thing when I reflect on the fact that Jesus, for my sake and for your sake, humbled himself to the elements, humbled himself to people. I like John 1, verses 10 to 11, says, "He was in the world, and the world came into being through him, and yet the world did not know him. He came to his own, and his own people did not accept him." Could you imagine how lonely Jesus must have felt as a human being? Separated from everyone around him, distant from them in profound ways. Think about his siblings, for example, perhaps disobedient to their parents, perhaps motivated by selfish reasons, and he never saw that in Jesus. And how disruptive that must have been, how they separated themselves from him. I don't think anybody in the world really knows loneliness like Jesus knew loneliness. Now, many of us are lonely. I know it's a really plague in our culture today, but Jesus was lonely in a way that we can't even imagine. He was lonely in Gethsemane. Remember, he asked some of the disciples to stay with him, to pray with him, and they couldn't even stay awake. His most lonely moment was no doubt at the cross, where he was hanging there, suspended between heaven and earth, ridiculed by the people going by, laughed at, mocked, and separated from his Father. How lonely that must have been. How deep loneliness that Jesus has endured for us, the thirst, the hunger, the elements that Jesus had to endure, even though he was their creator. I think Jesus is particularly equipped if I could just focus on that loneliness aspect for a moment, particularly equipped to deliver us from loneliness. You know, he's able to sympathize. Sympathy is having a kind of a sincere care and concern for those who are suffering. Specifically, in our what we're talking about here is for those who are lonely, those who are alone and feel separated from the people around them. Perhaps sometimes you have those feelings of separation and loneliness, even if you're in a crowd or in a group of people. Particularly empathize myself, sympathize with those who perhaps are part of families that are largely unbelievers, and how distant you can sometimes feel from your unbelieving family, even when you're among them. And that sympathy is something that Jesus experiences. He has that care and concern for those who are suffering because he himself suffered. But not only does he sympathize, but he empathizes as well. Empathy is sharing in someone's sorrow and suffering and pain, and in our case, loneliness. Sympathize is to be sorry for someone. Empathize is to share in that sorrow, share in the loneliness, and Jesus does that. So how do we respond to this? Well, I think what we want to do, you and I, brothers and sisters, is to know something about Jesus, to know that he is no plastic saint. He's not a distant being, but he is a person who humbled himself in order to be our Savior, our helper, our counselor, our friend. Later on in this book, starting in the end of chapter 4 and beginning chapter 5, we're going to see how important that is for Jesus to be able to sympathize with us and empathize with us, and how it makes him even more effective in his ministry today for us. So, brothers and sisters, when you are feeling lonely, when you are feeling separated from those around you, when you are feeling alienated from the world in which we find ourselves living in, dwell on Jesus. Know that he sympathizes and empathizes with us as we experience, to some small sense, the same things that he experienced when he was in this world. Brothers and sisters, let's pull together and help each other out and turn our loneliness over to Jesus and know that he is drawing us into community. He's drawing us into love for one another. I pray that you find yourself in a church that provides you with a sense of community and belongingness and togetherness that goes far beyond what we experience even with our biological families. I often find myself drawn to people and feeling closer to people who are believers that I've just met than I do with some members of my own family. So I'm sure you feel that way as well. And draw near to the Lord by drawing near to his people. See you next time as we go on our way through the book of Romans, or Hebrews. Will be in chapter 2, verses 5 through 18. We'll be looking a little bit more closely at that section. God bless you.